Hey everyone, welcome to the Pawareness podcast, and thanks for joining me. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, and also check us out at pawareness.org and on Instagram at pawareness_official. On Instagram, we are doing submissions for Pet of the Week, where you can submit your foster pet, and we'll pick one winner every month, and we'll give $200 to their choice of charity or foster. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Pawareness podcast. Today I have Sheryl Joyce, founder and CEO of Pet Pardon, which she formed after discovering a network of animal advocates sharing animals on Instagram and shelters on death row. And after being a part of the community for several months, she realized that there was a void in the animal care space and no platform that connected all of the conversations about this going on. And in a response to this, she created the Pet Pardon app, the first platform of its kind that relieves pressure on shelters and rescues by creating an easier channel for animal advocates to donate and support animals on the euthanasia list. Sheryl has always been a lifelong animal lover and has taken away many strays in her life and donates to various animal organizations around the world. Sheryl, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. And tell us a little bit more about the Pet Pardon app and what it exactly does.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. Around 2016, I was an early adopter of Instagram. And like any app, I kind of lost, interest in it and just kind of parked it to the side. Around 2016, I kind of got involved back got back onto Instagram. And I hadn't realized it, but I was following some accounts, some rescues. And just people were, some other what I call power networkers that were sharing animals. Let me just, kind of preface this a little bit and paint a picture for you. So each year, around 6 to 8 million animals enter shelters, and around 3 million sadly are euthanized, and that's just in the U.S. And a lot of them are healthy. 2.4 million have been cited on just some recent stats I saw are healthy and treatable. Why are the animals being euthanized? Because there's an overabundance of them. The system simply can't keep up with the influx. So imagine puppy mills, breeders, owner surrenders, and things like that. And I'll get into some other reasons why animals end up in shelters. So what I was seeing is that people imagine, the single source of truth for a dog that's on death row, basically, where the shelter, in this case, it's more often than not a shelter volunteer. They see the animals coming in after intake, they get put into the kennels. And what these volunteers are doing are taking videos and pictures and posting them on social media. Obviously, social media is a very powerful tool to get a message out. And so what's happening is that you've got Zeus, for example. I always use Zeus. And he needs to get out of the shelter. He's been given a set amount of time. He's healthy. They need more kennel space. So Zeus gets shared on Instagram. He gets shared on Facebook. He gets shared on Twitter. And what I was finding is that it was really difficult. Now, each dog has an ID number. That's how the animals are tracked in the shelter system. And so that number is always included with the post. So you're sharing a dog, you're sharing Zeus. And oftentimes what I was finding was that Instagram, now they've changed their algorithms. I'm not, technical. I couldn't tell you what, they've changed them to recently. But basically Zeus, they just identify people as spammers. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to gain the attention of a person. Best case scenario is getting Zeus adopted. Next best case scenario, and what you're trying to achieve is the attention of a rescue to save Zeus and get him out of the shelter, into training or whatever else Zeus needs to get into a situation with a nice family. So people were, personally for me too, I was thinking, geez, who do I tag on these? Who do I, what rescues? I don't know any rescues because I'm just new to the community. And so I soon found out that it's very, Zeus is located in a shelter in California. Most of the time, a rescue in New York doesn't have pull rights in California. So let's just say, for argument's sake, very, very simple, that Zeus needs a rescue in California. So I didn't know any rescues in California to tag. So I was curating lists by hand and putting them in my notes on my phone and copying and pasting. So imagine, there's dozens of dogs, hundreds of dogs that need help. And so Instagram basically flags the account because you're tagging, and it just blocks you and goes, you know what, you're spamming, you're blocked. So this was happening quite a lot in the community, not just with myself, with other people. So that's the first issue. The next issue is people, in order to incentivize a rescue to save an animal, people were pledging. So think of pledging as a donation, so that a donation in a future, down the road. So I see a dog, I see Zeus, I go, oh, how can I help Zeus? Well, I'm going to pledge money so that when Zeus gets rescued, or if Zeus gets rescued, that money will go to the rescue to help them, place them in foster and all that kind of stuff. So imagine I quickly evolved from a person tagging rescues because, other people were tagging the same rescues. And imagine being a rescue and being tagged on the same dog or dozens of dogs. Like your inbox, your messages are going crazy, your notifications are going crazy. So I kind of evolved from being a person that tags and tags rescues to a pledger. And that's where I felt I could make more of a difference. So I was, pledging for Zeus, pledging for Sally, pledging for all these dogs. And I had, no idea how I could track the pledging. So I created this massive spreadsheet. And so there is a way, and again, I mentioned the dog's ID is that's how you can track a dog. But oftentimes you wouldn't hear what happened to the dog. So, you're kind of, once in a while you get a notification, and when I mean a notification, as in not like an automated one, but just somebody telling you, oh, hi, my name's Frank. I rescued Zeus, 6 weeks ago. I saw that you pledged in the comments. Can you honor your pledge? Here's the payment details. So I quickly thought, geez, there's got to be a better way to do this. So hence the Pet Pardon app. So I'm solving two issues. Obviously, the first being, we're not going to block people from tagging rescues. That's the purpose of the app. And secondly, we're tracking pledges. So we launched the first version of the app last March, and that was basically to prove out the pledging aspect, to make sure people felt comfortable doing that through a third-party app. And to date, I've got several hundred people that pledge, pledge through the Pet Pardon app. They have comfort. We've, we're transparent. We don't take any money off the pledging. And right now, it's just indicating an amount of money. So again, just to prove out the pledging bit. So that's kind of a very high level, the reason why we created the app. And we're really trying to bring a tool to the community to give them a way that can effectively, track pledges in the first instance, but the app will continue to evolve, and we're working on the next version of the app, and which will be coming out in a few weeks.
I guess, what kind of rescues or organizations do you think this is best fit for? Is it for all of them, you think? Would it make sense for pretty much every rescue to use this, or are there a particular kind that you think you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing big and small rescues. We're seeing rescues, for the most part. I mentioned shelter volunteers. So they're the ones on the front lines. Yes, there's animal control officers and things like that. But imagine, some shelters that are bigger, the ACOs, the animal control are out doing their job, and the volunteers are the ones, I give props to a lot of the volunteers. It's heart-wrenching. I can't imagine going in and taking videos of dogs and of cats that, you're sharing that may not be there tomorrow. So it's really meant for everybody. And I really, in the beginning, was more thinking about the smaller rescues that have very little resource. And there's actually even a shelter in Northern California that has 2 volunteers, and they run it completely themselves. They don't get paid. And it's, again, originally meant for smaller rescues because they're limited resources and limited time. But I mean, the more rescues I talk to, they rely on volunteers, and a lot of them have other jobs, and, they're doing rescue because they love animals in the first place. So it's really meant for large and small, because I think at the end of the day, securing funds through the pledges is something that obviously every rescue needs funds to save more animals, because when the dog is taken out of the shelter, more often than not, they'll probably need training. And then if they get put into a foster situation, which most of the rescues I interact with, and as I understand, are foster-based, meaning that they don't have kennels, they don't have physical bricks and mortar. They rely on fosters to take the dogs in, and rescues pay for the food. And if the dog has any medical needs or medication or anything it needs to take, they pay for everything, food, toys, everything. So money's obviously important, and it helps them rescue more.
Yeah, and I think I like that. It's like squeezing more out of the orange or lemon, so to speak. Like, it's getting more juice. And you're right. Like, I can't tell you how many big organizations I've spoken to, and they're still, I ask them, hey, are you doing this full time? And they're like, no, this is just a huge passion for me. So any way that they can automate, make things more efficient, and get more dollars to the cats and dogs and organization, I think is it's solving a big problem. So I really like that. And I know you already kind of addressed this, but I wanted to make sure we covered everything. How exactly it addresses the rate of possibly euthanasia across shelters, right? I mean, really, you're helping get more dollars to these organizations and making sure that the pledges get there. So that could help euthanasia, correct?
Yeah. So basically, sadly, a lot of the shelters they're just full, and they have to, some of the dogs that come in have as little as 72 hours to get out. And that's, and I mean, responsible rescues, of which there are many, they don't, I'm sure they want to rescue every dog, but if they don't have a place for the dog and they don't have the funds, then they just won't take the dog on. That to me is being responsible. It does help because it's making things more efficient. It's, again, money's not the be all and end all, but it does help. But it's also, again, I envision, PEPRN as an end-to-end process whereby as soon as that animal comes into the shelter upon intake, it's either adopted, which is a great scenario for the animal with, through a private adoption, or it's rescued. And then, the rescue, the dog goes either into training and then it goes into a foster situation. And then it's with that foster. This is an ideal scenario, by the way, with that foster until it can be adopted. And so I really like, people that pledge, and I'm a pledger. I love when I see where the dog is. It's like, you know where the money's gone, that the rescue, the dog's in safe hands, and people love a feel-good story. Sadly, not every day, compassion fatigue is rampant. I have it a lot. I know, there's a big network of people that I interact with through direct messages and group chats that I've never met before, but we all share a common goal. We want to try to save as many animals as we can. We know that that's not possible, but for me, the tool is just, I did step away when I first started out in the community because I was just feeling so deflated and thinking, man, how can I really come back and bring something to the community that I feel will be worthwhile? And I took, a year and a half away from Instagram. It was really hard because I felt like I was letting the animals down. And so I came back and I had the app, and that's when I launched last year. And I'm getting a lot of good traction, and people have been amazing, in the community, and people want something. It's just, it takes time to get people to sort of change a certain behavior. I'm not a big person on Facebook. I don't like Facebook for various reasons, but realizing obviously that Facebook owns Instagram, but Instagram to me is where I feel most comfortable, and I feel like I can make the most difference. And, again, we all have our social channel of choice, but I really I really just wanted to come back with a tool for people to be able to, yes, in the first instance, track the pledges, because I think, again, securing the funds is really important. But the next version of the app is just, I can't wait. But I have been, I'm a user, and I talk to my users a lot. I don't talk to all of them, but I do feel like I do have a good handle on what people really want and what's needed to make things more efficient to ultimately save more. So
that's really cool that, I think that you're embedded in the community, you're asking the right questions, you're getting feedback. I think that's the sign of like any awesome project. So you're right there. And then I wanted to ask too, for maybe some of our listeners, are there particular countries that this is geared towards, or is it kind of, what's that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now I'm tackling the shelter system in the US. I'm from Canada, I'm from Toronto, and honestly, until I really started this project, I didn't really realize that there was such a problem. And I'm not picking on the US, but there's just a lot of dogs in shelters for various reasons. Canada, yes, we have shelters and people surrender their animals and everything else, but they just don't seem to have the overcrowding issues. And I've actually learned that, some of the animals, especially on the West Coast, so California, they get, there's some partnered rescues in Vancouver that will intake a lot of the animals. To that point, so yes, it's a U.S. shelter problem, but there are there's five states that kill 50% of their shelter animals, and in order it's Texas, California, Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, and I don't want to get political or anything else. It's just the way things are. Texas, there's a lot of open intake shelters, meaning they have to take every animal. And I was working with a woman in Cuero, which is, I think, outside of Dallas, small towns, Texan town outside of Dallas. And she was physically going to a shelter there, and they had no volunteers. Yes, they have an animal control officer, they have a shelter manager, and they have a person, I think, was the intake, or she was the rescue coordinator. So they were very understaffed, but overwhelmed with a lot of dogs. And sadly, a lot of them came in with collars and microchips. People, it's just, maybe it's cultural. They just let their dogs, roam around free. And a lot of, the ACOs are bringing in dogs that are owned. So they're taking up kennel space. So when they actually have a stray that comes in, there's no place for the stray. You got to make that decision, right? So she was making some good traction, and posting on the app, and also posting on Instagram. But unfortunately, just not enough rescues to take the dogs. So you're on this you're on a hamster wheel. It's a constant battle, and it's really quite sad. So I do find, so I'm not picking on Texas. It's just there's a lot of smaller shelters there. They don't get seen. Seen equals not saved. We've got a saying, seen equals saved. And again, you can't save them all, but you can sure give an animal a darn good chance of getting saved if you're sharing it. Because you never know. Like, I have people messaging me all the time. Oh, I wouldn't have, known about this Zeus if I hadn't seen Zeus on your page, or I saw Zeus on another Instagram page that networks a lot. So personally for me, I would love to be able to put every single dog I see on the app. But I do have my group of people. I've got, and when I say people, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean friends that are based in all these various states that do concentrate, and they do try to help the smaller shelters. And it's good, but it's heartbreaking too. But like I said, you can't save them all, but you can. We're certainly trying. So.
And like you said earlier, compassion fatigue is a real thing. And I think it's just really important for all people that are in this space to really monitor that within themselves. And like you said, take a step back if you need to, or I thought that was really good insight on that.
Yeah.
And how can we support this how do we do that? You know, I know you mentioned there's a new update coming out within a few weeks. And where can people find you at? I know you mentioned Instagram. What's that like?
I'm on Instagram all the time. I literally eat, sleep, drink Instagram. People want to download the app right now. You can go to my website. It's pet-pardon.com and go to app features. And then at the very top, there's a big red button that says download the app. You can follow me on Instagram at petpardon. There's a link tree in my link tree bio. You can download the app from there. I'm on Facebook. To be honest, I don't share dogs on Facebook. I just, I'm a one person kind of entrepreneur right now, solo founder. So it's really hard for me to manage Facebook posts of the dogs, but I do post things, educational things on there. And people, if anyone wants to email me, it's Sheryl J, and it's SHERYLJ at pet-pardon.com. If I may, Chris, one of the things that really needs to happen is educating the public. I think, sadly, a lot of people think that if, they do need to surrender their animal to a shelter, that little Fluffy is going to be okay. Well, I hate to be such a negative, but Fluffy's probably going to get adopted because maybe Fluffy's a smaller breed, but, they have to euthanize. And I think people also get confused about no kill versus kill. We won't get into that. That's a different topic. But sadly, shelters, I'm not bashing shelters. They've got a tough job to do. And, I think a large part of the success of the animals getting adopted and rescued are basically based up to the volunteers. Shelters have their hands tied and only can do so much, but people just really need to understand that, it's not really a shelter in its true sense. There's lots of things. There's economical reasons why, animals need to be euthanized and things like that. As a couple of, if I could throw some stats at you, 30% of animals in shelters are left by their owners. And some of the reasons cited are, pet problems. So, including aggressive behavior. I didn't know this, Burmese mountain dog was going to be 8 feet tall, really. And health issues. And with COVID, we're seeing, I'm just basically going off of what I'm seeing on Instagram. I am not an expert on medical cases and for each state, I don't have specific stats, but for me personally, I share a lot of dogs from, Texas, California, Florida, all those 5 key states. And there's a lot of animals that, a stray gets hit by a car, ends up in the shelter. It's really sad because, it's probably got a broken pelvis and things like that. And it's all about money sometimes. And so, owners just, bring a dog in. I can't afford to pay for the bedding. It's really heartbreaking. And people getting pets as presents or giving pets as presents, it's an absolute no-no. Like, don't give pets for presents, guys. Like, don't give a cat to your mom because you think your mom wants one. There's a lot of pets that end up back in, Easter time and Christmas. Animal shelters cost U.S. citizens almost $2 billion a year. You have a right to know what's going on at the shelters. And again, I'm not suggesting it's all negative and all bad, but I just think people have a perception that, there's, I don't know what their perception is, but education. So everyone's trying to educate people on what's happening at shelters. So education for me is key in anything. It doesn't matter what vertical it is. So that's pretty much it. But if I could say one more thing, at the beginning of COVID, everyone was, there's a lot of people fostering animals out of shelters, which was great. People are starting to go back to work now, and the animals are ending back up in the shelters. So one of the problems, and it's not really a problem, it's just a key element of getting an animal out of a shelter is having a foster in place. So, 9 times out of 10, if a dog might have rescue interests, but if that rescue doesn't have a foster, they it's just being responsible. They can't take that dog if they have no place to put the dog, because a lot of rescues don't like to put taking a dog out of a shelter into boarding. And I totally get that, because you're taking it out of, yes, it's, not going to be at risk of being euthanized, but it's going back into a kennel. So fosters are key. And if anyone listening out there, Google your local rescues, your shelters, foster. I mean, sadly, I feel a bit hypocritical. We live in a flat and I just can't foster. But, I do talk to a lot of people that do foster, and it's very gratifying. The rescue that you foster through will pay for food, bedding, everything. So there's no financial burden to take a foster. It's just your time. And sometimes it's a medical situation or even a hospice. And it's very gratifying. So if that's something that, if anyone listening is interested in doing, contact your local rescue or your local shelter and see if you can foster, because you will save 2 dogs, because you'll save that dog and you'll open up kennel space for another dog. So.
That's a really good point. Like you said, you save 2 dogs, and there's always room for another foster. Always. Like they're needed so badly. So yeah, I could not have said that any better. So yeah, thank you. And Sheryl, I want to say, I love your passion. I can tell this is this is your purpose, like what you're here for. Like I can tell you're just like all about it. And I love that. I love speaking with people like you. Thank you so much for coming on. It was so great. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm excited to download this app. I'm excited to see the new rollout, and hopefully more and more organizations can, continue to implement this app and part of their whole system. And I will leave a link in the description below to everything we talked about, wherever you're listening. Check it out. Follow her on Instagram. Thank you so much, Sheryl. I really appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure.